Welcome to Oxygen Mask on First, loving and living with dogs with big feelings. My name is Elaine Lawler, and I'm so excited that you're here joining me for this webinar. This is the topic I'm extremely passionate about, and I have a lot to share with you. When our dogs have big feelings about the world, they behave in ways that can make competing, training, and even daily life a challenge. I don't think I need to tell you that because you're probably here for exactly this reason. Our dogs actually have a lot of reasons for having these big feelings. And these reasons can be, their physiology. Some dogs are just programmed that way. It could be some things that come from training. It might be because of past trauma that they've experienced. Sometimes it's our own emotions that go travel down the leash or other reasons. There are generally just a lot of different reasons why our dogs have big feelings. Importantly, there are many reasons why we have big feelings too. Again, we can just be programmed that way. We can have a very sensitive nervous system, sensitive nature. Our social programming tells us what is right and what is wrong. And we have a lot of beliefs around that can really stimulate a lot of feelings. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight. Past experiences can have us sensitized towards future events, trauma, of course. Our skill level and in our ability to understand what's going on and how to handle it. All of these factors come into play around how our feelings react to what our dogs are doing. Now, there are thankfully countless resources that have been emerging in recent years around helping our dogs. Our dogs now have behaviorists that we can work with. We have training specialists. There are a huge plethora of medications. There are online training and competing options for when it's easier and safer to work at home. We have gut rebuilding protocols, supplements. There's all sorts of holistic approaches, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot out there now that we can do to help our dogs manage their big feelings. Now, the question that I want to discuss with you tonight is, what about you? What are you doing to help you with your big feelings? I created this webinar because I have worked with countless people now who do so much for their dogs and don't even realize that they need to take care of themselves. Not only do they need to take care of themselves, but they need to do so first. So if this is you, if you're struggling with anxiety and stress, grief, disappointment, fear, frustration, anger, or a whole mix of these or other emotions because of what's going on with your dog, I created this webinar for you. I created this webinar to support you, to teach you the strategies and understanding you need to support yourself so you can support your dog in that order. And I want you to never forget that, okay? Support yourself first. Oxygen mask on first. Just like they say on an airplane, if you've ever flown on one, first thing they say is put your oxygen mask on first, and then you can help others. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, first, just very briefly, a little bit about me. I'm a dog sport performance coach. I have the great privilege of being an SDSA instructor. I'm the creator and head coach at Dog Sport Scholars, which is a mindset for dog sport coaching membership. I compete in herding and agility. Right now, herding is my main thing that I've been going all in on the last couple of years. And I live with, train, and breed working border collies on a sheep farm in Eastern Ontario. So I actually currently live with a lot of dogs. I have been training and working with dogs for going on 35 years now. I have done a lot of rescue. I have lived with many dogs. I have trained many dogs. I have coached a lot of teams. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about in this hour that we have together is coming from my personal experience. I've done a lot of work on myself with my own dogs through these issues, and then I've helped a lot of other people do the same. What we're going to talk about is, first, we're going to talk a lot about understanding feelings. I'm going to give you some short-term tactics about how to manage yourself when things go awry, which they always do when we work with dogs. It's just the nature of having dogs and working with dogs and loving dogs, especially those with big feelings. We're going to spend the lion's share of our time together talking about long-term strategies, because I don't want to just give you a Band-Aid. I don't want to just teach you how to, deep breathe and calm down and carry on as is. I want to teach you how to manage yourself, how to support yourself in a way that may actually have a permanent shift in the way you respond and the way you feel, a permanent shift for the better. So that's for the better. When I say better, I mean, I want you to feel better. I want you to feel calmer. I want you to feel more capable, more competent, more empowered. And that's what our work is together. And then I'm going to leave you with some additional resources if you want to go into this further. In particular, I'm going to walk you through my 5-step process for shifting your energy and your thinking and your feeling around your dogs with big feelings. 5-step process for how to manage your big feelings in such a way that you permanently become more empowered. Okay, first we acknowledge the grief. We acknowledge the grief and loss. Next, we understand why we're feeling the way we feel. Really dig into there, try to figure out what's going on in our brains. Next, we separate our feelings from our dog's feelings. That can be kind of a big ball of mess, right? Where, your dog gets upset, we get upset, what's theirs, what's ours, we sometimes really don't know. So I'm going to teach you how to work on separating. We might never know 100%, but we can make a lot of progress in this area. And then once you've separated what's yours and what's your dog's, we uncouple your needs from what your dog can actually do for you. This is a really important step. Finally, we rewrite our story. We completely reframe what's going on and look at it in a different light. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay, step one. Step one is allowing and processing your feelings. It's normal to have negative emotions when you face unexpected challenges. You got your dog, whether as a small puppy or as an adult, doesn't matter. You had dreams, you had a vision, you had hopes, you had expectations for how things were going to go. You were really excited, you were full of love, you were full of optimism. And then somewhere along the line, maybe right from the start, maybe a little bit down the road, something changed. Things didn't go as you expected. Things didn't go as you hoped. Okay? Your dog stopped behaving or did not behave as you had expected. And this is causing challenges in your life. It's normal to feel sad. It's normal to feel disappointed. It's normal to feel angry. Whatever emotions are coming up for you, I want you to understand that that's normal. And I want you to take a moment and just allow that feeling. Okay? Don't try and, what I find with so many of the people that I've coached is that they don't acknowledge their own suffering. And we can't tend to do that because we'll really focus on our dogs, right? I want to help my dog. I want to help my dog. And our social programming, especially if we've been socially raised as a woman, right? We, in particular, but our culture in general programs us to put others' needs ahead of ours. So it's very, very common with our dogs that we just focus on the dog and we don't focus on our end of the leash. And we have feelings, we have needs, we have desires and passions. And we get our dogs because of that. And when they can't deliver why we brought them into our life, that is going to come across as a shock, as a challenge, as a disappointment. And we're going to have feelings about it. And that's okay. I don't want you to judge yourself for having those feelings. That's the most important thing here. Don't judge, just notice, name those feelings, allow them, give yourself a hug. So again, don't bottle up these emotions. Don't deny them. What we resist persists. So we want to just allow them, feel them. We're going to talk more about what feelings are in a minute. And then also, this is really important to know. When you allow a feeling it'll just kind of wash over you like a wave. You can allow that big feeling to come up and then allow it to just pass. Now, if you get stuck and spin in that feeling, I'm going to explain to you why that happens sometimes. But most feelings will just pass through you like a wave. But if we push against them, if we resist them, then they get stuck. And that's where we get ourselves into trouble and experience a lot of pain. Know that feelings are never a problem. However you are feeling, like I said, is legitimate. You don't need to justify it. And you absolutely, I strongly encourage you to notice if you're judging yourself and stop judging yourself. No judgment here, okay? Well, you do want to observe it and notice it, but you want to do that more in the way of like an investigative journalist as opposed to a judge. No one gets to decide how you feel except for you. Okay, so once you have acknowledged the feelings, the struggle, named it, sat with it for a little bit, allow yourself some time to grieve, we're going to start working on learning how to manage your mind around those emotions and maybe shift them, maybe find new feelings, maybe readjust what's going on. So the second step for this process is to understand where your feelings are coming from, why you're having them. And I know you're going, yeah, I know I'm having my feelings because my dog is behaving in all these ways that are really upsetting. And I'm going to just tell you right now that that is not why you have your feelings. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Okay. Feelings are natural biological processes that serve an important role. They can be, we're going to talk about how feelings can be clean or dirty. I don't love that term, but that's the term that's out there. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the difference between feelings and emotions. And I pulled this out of some psychology literature. It's not these definitions, and I should actually take a quick moment to say that everything that I'm sharing with you about this work is comes from theory, and there are a lot of theories out there. I am not a trained psychologist. I am not a trauma therapist. I'm a dog sport coach. I have studied these topics extensively. I've put them into practice. So what I'm sharing with you is work that is what the understanding that I've come to based on the research that I've done and the practice that I have engaged in with myself, my dogs, and with the teams that I've coached. So I want you to just be aware of that. Like I said, everything I'm presenting is theory and my conclusions from my practical experience. Take what works for you. And don't be afraid to question everything, right? Because it's all theory. And I just want to make sure that that's really clear. Okay, so part of this little preamble is that in the literature, there is a separate definition for emotions and feelings. And I'm going to just super briefly touch on that just because that question may come up. What's the difference between a feeling and emotion? So in the literature, roughly speaking, an emotion is a neurochemical reaction to a stimulus. So in our case, our dog does a behavior. We're going to consider our dog's behavior as a stimulus to us. And then we have like a reaction to it. And so that is technically what they would consider an emotion in the literature. And they break down that there are 8 primary emotions. Some say 6. I'm sure there are other researchers who say there are more, but we'll just go with these 8: happiness, sadness, fear, interest, disgust, anger, surprise, and shame. And those are kind of like the core emotions that we experience. And then all others sort of fall under one of those umbrellas. Now, a feeling, again, from the literature, is described as something that comes from our prefrontal cortex. So our big human brain at the front of our heads. And we can say that the emotion comes from maybe our brainstem, our ancient brain, which I'll refer to as our lizard brain. So we got our lizard brain at the back of our head, and our prefrontal cortex, our big human brain, I'll call it our wizard brain, right? So our wizard brain is what they say creates feelings. And basically what happens is we have this like emotional reaction to what's going on, and then our brain makes it mean something. And that's what creates feelings. Now, I actually separate this a little bit differently. I'd like to look at this more as a kind of like a nervous system reaction and an intellectual reaction. So instead of saying emotions and feelings, this is how I separate it. Again, when I looked at the literature, there's just so many different ways people talk about these. Are they different? Are they not? So I just like to kind of categorize our reactions in two ways. One is a gut nervous system reaction. And that's when you have like your dog has a reaction to something. Let's say you're in class, your dog has, your dog barks at another dog in class, and then you have a reaction to that stimulus. So the stimulus is something stimulates your dog and your dog reacts. Okay. That's your dog's stuff at the dog end of the leash. Now, your picture is your stimulus is your dog has a behavior. And then that behavior triggers a feeling in you, whether it's an emotion or a feeling. I don't feel there's a really important, a useful need to split that. It's more that we have kind of like a gut reaction. And so you'll have a strong emotional reaction to that. That's your big feeling, right? Your anger, your fear, your sadness, your frustration, your shame. And that triggers your nervous system into a fight or flight state. It puts you into, it overactivates your sympathetic nervous system. So you end up in a fight or flight situation. Okay. Now, the other side of the coin is the intellectual reaction. And that's where we then stew and spin and think and dwell on what happened. So when we have a gut nervous system reaction, when we can call it triggered, not necessarily in a clinical sense, but you get like your nervous system gets set off. You get stimulated into that high state of sympathetic activation. That's where we need these short-term tactics that I'm going to share with you. However, that moment of like being triggered like that is just a very small piece of the picture that we're dealing with. So then we have to look at long-term strategies. So I'm going to share briefly what my short-term strategies are. So short-term tactics, of how you deal with something when it happens in the moment. But the bulk of your work is going to be in the long-term strategy side of the equation here, because that's where most of our suffering is experienced. And that's where we can make the most impact and change. And the more you do the long-term strategies, the less you're going to need the short-term tactics, because fewer and fewer things are going to trigger you, or you're not going to get into that highest state of arousal because of the long-term work. So that's where we're going to spend most of our time. But I do want to give you a few short-term strategies right off the bat, so that you have these with you, so that you can implement them. Because the long-term stuff, for some people, we see change right away. Most of us, it takes time and practice and time and practice and time and practice. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, so you've had this. Your dog does a behavior, and you have an emotional reaction to it. Sometimes we start to preempt the behavior. So your dog doesn't even have to react. You see something in the environment that you're afraid your dog is going to react to. So you've back-chained the stimulus to maybe another dog approaching, maybe another dog just in your visual sphere, right? Something like that. And then you go into a state of fight or flight. So what do we do here? What are the short-term tactics? I call this the 4 Ds. So the first thing you do is drop your energy. The second thing you want to do is defend your dog. The third thing you want to do is get distance. And the fourth thing you want to do is down-regulate your nervous system and your dog's nervous system. Okay, let's go over each one. First thing you do is drop your energy. This can be challenging in the moment because you're in fight or flight. What happens when you're in fight or flight is your brain dumps a bunch of neurochemicals into your body that shunt the blood away from your prefrontal cortex. So your wizard brain gets thrown offline. It's like shut down. When you're in danger, your brain does not want you thinking, does not want you wasting valuable time and energy deciding what to do. It just wants you to take action. So it shunts the blood away from your prefrontal cortex. It all goes into your into your limbic brain, into your lizard brain. It goes into your muscles. Your heart starts pumping harder. Your muscles start to tense up. Your breathing is going to become more shallow. Your digestive system is going to go offline. That's why you end up with digestive distress. This is all true for, when you're going to compete and so on and so forth, right? When you go into a state of overactivation of your sympathetic nervous system, it puts you into a state where you can either fight or run, and it puts everything else offline. So here's the challenge. You don't want to be just panicking. You want to take charge of the situation. So the first thing you want to do is try and pull yourself back a little bit from the edge. And to do that, you want to do what I call the energy drop exercise. And I'm going to just very quickly walk you through that right now. And it's very, very simple. So let's take a moment and picture a big ball of light over your head. It can be whatever color you want. I usually visualize white. Now I take a deep breath in. Deep breath out. And as you release your breath, I want you to picture dropping that ball of light through your head, down your body. It's collecting all of your energy, all of that nervous energy and tension. Do this along with me. Picture the ball of light going down through your body, through your stomach, through your hips, now down your legs, and down into your feet and into the ground. The ground, visualize the ground just absorbing all that energy. What this does is it grounds you. It's going to shift you out of that state of activated sympathetic nervous system, sympathetic activation. And it may not, I'm not saying it's going to make you all zen in the moment. It's just going to pull you back from the edge enough. Maybe it'll get your prefrontal cortex back online. That's what we want. We want to start thinking, not just reacting. It's going to just calm you a little bit. This is important also to support your dog. So it's going to allow you to think, and it's going to allow you to be calm and support your dog. Now, it's very, very challenging to remember to do this in the moment. So this is what you have to do. You have to practice this a lot, away from your dog, away from events that will trigger this reaction. And when I first started doing this, I would just practice this all the time, anytime. And you can practice this. You go think about it. Think about a situation that sets you off. Visualize it, because our brains don't know the difference between actually being in a situation and thinking about it. So you can actually sit down in the quiet and safe of your own home and visualize an experience you had with your dog that set you off. And then deep breath, drop your energy. Practice it. Make it a habit. And trust me, I do this all the time. I run a farm. I manage a large pack of dogs. I used to have horses. Sometimes I'd have half a dozen border collies get in with my sheep and my horses, chasing sheep around. And then the horses would start racing, and the sheep would run to hide under the horses' feet. And the horses are kicking and bucking. And I've got to fish my, 6-month-old border collie with no capable brain capacity, because all he wants is to chase the sheep. And I've got to get in there and get him safely and get everybody safe. If I'm in a panic, it's just going to cause pandemonium. I have stood there watching that chaos, done the energy drop exercise, and watch everybody calm down. The horses, the sheep, the dog. And then I got my brain back, and I walk over and I pick up my dog and I leave. Okay. So practice this. If this is the only thing you take away from tonight, it can change your life. Next, defend your dog. Now, I don't mean get out there yelling and screaming, right? We've just dropped our energy. What I mean by defend, I picked the word, really I should say protect, but I wanted you to remember the 4Ds as a way of, like, again, your brain is offline. 4Ds, drop energy, defend my dog. So you want to protect your dog, however that is necessary in the moment. Usually it just involves creating some space, recover control. You may need to, if this is your dog who's got the zoomies and is running around an agility ring, I have caught my dog by energy drop and sitting on the floor. My dog comes over and is like, oh, hello. And then I pet my dog. Everything's calm, right? So calming yourself down. If your dog, if you have your dog, if you have control over your dog, create some space. You may need to ask people to step back. And here's a little pro tip. Other people are allowed to think whatever they want. Other people are allowed to be wrong about you. Remind yourself of that. Don't worry about what they're thinking. It's none of your business. What matters is taking care of yourself, protecting your dog. Okay? Maybe you have a dog that you can pick up. That's a really simple way of let's just end this right now. Pick up your dog. I do this all the time. I have border collies. I can pick them up, even the big ones. You can't always do that. I also have Maremma sheepdogs. I cannot, livestock guardian dogs. I cannot pick them up. That's not an option in that situation, but that can be a solution. You can redirect your dog. And these, again, are all practices that you probably already have in place, and you just need to remember them. And the way you remember them is to get your wizard brain back online by doing your energy drop. So do that. Then move away. Just get some space, get some distance. If you're at a class, go back to your crating area, maybe step outside, maybe go back to your car, do something. Just get some space for both of you and your dog so that you can both then down regulate. You need to get your nervous system back into a calmer state. And also, this is really important. Remember that your nervous system can take, if you've had a big dump of adrenaline, or your dog, or both of you, it can take a long time for that to recover. So sometimes if you've had a big shakeup like that, leave and give yourself a couple of days. If it's been a big upset. If it's a minor one, maybe just moving away a little bit is going to be all that it takes. But if you've had either you or your dog have had a big adrenaline release, you need to allow your body to metabolize that, get it out of your system. And importantly, to do that, you want to move. So don't just go sit in your car. You might need to do that for a couple of minutes and breathe and do your energy drop and recollect yourself. Then go for a walk. Get out there and move, because what's happened is your brain has dumped a bunch of neurochemicals into your body, and you need to metabolize those neurochemicals. They're going to feel terrible. Your brain just said, run or fight. And if we just sit and do nothing, then that just stays in our system and feels terrible. So get out there and move, work it out, recognize, I just have a bunch of neurochemicals in my body right now. I need to metabolize them, need to get out there and move around. Other strategies that I don't have time to teach you about, but I'll just mention them right now, are EFT, emotional freedom technique, or tapping. Hugely powerful. It's not something that will necessarily have the biggest impact the first time you do it. So you got to practice it, and it becomes a nervous system response. There's tons out there. I have one thing included in our resources for this webinar. And then you can just Google it, and there'll be a lot more information. And I'll mention it more I've created a workbook for you if you want that as well. Essential oils, I find those to be really powerful. This is a new area that I'm studying that may or may not work for you, but I'm finding that to be really effective. Again, exercise, physical movement. Once you're calm, then we get into journaling and your long-term strategy work, which is what we're going to talk about next.